Hi, I'm Tom Brown. Welcome to another episode of the Totally TA podcast. Today I'm joined by Wendy King, who is a highly respected and experienced global head of talent acquisition. Today we're talking about the value of talent acquisition, and we're going to touch on the current state of play with regards to all things candidate experience. I'm genuinely excited to be discussing this subject with Wendy. Before I do, I'll hand across to you so you can give a bit of an intro.
Thank you, Tom. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. You are my first podcast experience. Thank you for being so gentle and kind with me. I am a global head of TA. I have been in recruitment, talent acquisition for over 22 years. I've sat both sides of the fence and started my career in agency. The latter half of my career, I've spent more time in-house, building, scaling, transforming internal talent acquisition teams and functions. I'm currently open to work and have a plethora of experience in various industries and sectors. So even if you're looking for somebody just to have a chat with about your TA strategy, please reach out. I'm more than happy to have that conversation. I'm looking forward to our conversation today, Tom.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Let's jump right in. Talk me through your thoughts on the last few years in talent acquisition.
The only way to describe the current market is brutal. And I think unless you're experiencing it or have somebody who is going through it, it's quite hard to relate to in terms of how tough it is. We saw challenges in the market back in 2008, 2009 around the financial crash, but that's paled into insignificance comparatively to the market that we see today. I think we're in this space where we're still bouncing and recovering from the COVID. 2020, the pandemic hits, the talent acquisitions functions shrink, and then all of a sudden the markets start to open up, and then lots of businesses need to recruit. The market is then flooded with opportunity. There's lots of movement across the end of 2020 into 2021. What we're seeing is lots of recruits with varying levels of experience get very high salaries, very inflated job titles, being brought into roles that typically they wouldn't necessarily have been brought into pre-pandemic, which is great because the industry's going through a boom and there's lots of movement. 2022, I think we start to see the reality. We've done lots of hiring. We've hired lots of recruiters. We needed to get that transactional approach up and running. We may have overhired recruiters, but what we now need are strategic leaders to really help us herd the cats and work out how to effectively deploy recruiters on our talent acquisition strategy. And so there was an awful lot of heads of TA, international heads of TA director type opportunities across 2022 and heading into 2023. Then the markets contract again. If you're a CFO or a finance director and you're looking at your balance sheet, then your strategic head of TA is a cost. I think the difference now is the breadth of the candidates on the market is far wider. You've got junior recruiters, experienced recruiters, agency recruiters, strategic heads of recruitment. So you've got the soup to nuts of industry on the market at this moment in time, which is why I think there's more noise around the kind of brutality of the market because of the diversity of the candidate pool that's currently out there.
Especially around 2020, companies were heavily focused on just hiring recruiters. It actually gave a lot of opportunity for agency recruiters to do that pivot into in-house, where I know that traditionally there is a lot of agency recruiters who feel more comfortable in-house. So that's really good. But I think that coupled with everything you've said about costs, we are now left with this influx of talent acquisition professionals who are available. Talking about candidate experience, do you think poor candidate experience has always been there? It just feels more prevalent at the moment because of those vocal masses of TA professionals who are now fed up with being on the other side of that poor candidate experience.
Yeah, I smile through this because anyone who's worked with me across the duration of my career will know that I beat the drum on candidate experience. It's one of my non-negotiables as a leader. There's a couple of things that really rattle me, and candidate experience is one of them, because it's not just about providing a candidate experience, it's about providing a human interaction and a human connection. We call it ghosting now. I'm an old lady of the recruitment space, and it was just called being rude before. It's not acceptable. There's many reasons for it. There's candidates that ghost employers, that ghost candidates. For me, it's not a new thing. It's been interwoven in our industry since day one, because there's always going to be that difficult conversation. There's always going to be the candidate that you know, that doesn't matter how rational your explanation, how clear your feedback, the anticipated reaction can sometimes outweigh the necessity to do the right thing. It's very rife at the moment, which is concerning. Going back to the breadth of the people on the market, there's an awful lot of people who are going to remember that very lived experience when we get jobs the other side.
I always say this, you've heard me say this a million times, all these excellent TA professionals like yourself who are on the market now, you will get jobs in the end, right? There's no question about it. There's no option not to. And there's reams of TA professionals receiving this poor candidate experience. When you do get jobs, do you think that there'll be this sort of empathy revolution of improved candidate experience and things will get better from that side?
I love the term empathy revolution. You should trademark that, Tom. And I do think there will be an empathy revolution, but I think underpinning that, there's going to be a back to basics revolution, because there's a huge amount of discussion around the impact and influence of AI and automation on candidate experience and the recruitment process. The back to basics route, putting candidates and their experience, your stakeholders or clients and their experience front and center to make sure that the objective is achieved. Talent acquisition should be a very commercially aligned, lockstep with the business team and function, not just a lovely transactional team that sits in the background sifting CVs. That is the difference between recruitment and talent acquisition. The application rates are insane. Not everything can be pushed back and blamed on technology. Not everything can be attributed to systems. There is a human component into that basic foundation of people at its core. The empathy will come from that. We're going to have to look at processes and systems. Yeah. How do we connect with our candidates? How do we connect with our hiring managers? How do we connect with our stakeholders or our clients? How do we really listen to what they want? Are we curious? Are we challenging and questioning based on the intelligence that we have from the market? Or are we just order taking? Because if you're order taking, that back to basics human connection starts to diminish, because you haven't got that kind of special magic of what is it the candidate is really looking for and what is it the client really needs. I'm excited about the empathy revolution, and I hope that it is underpinned by a back to basics revolution.
I'm really excited for TA teams to, as you say, get back to basics. And more than that, I'm excited for LinkedIn to be stripped of all this noise of poor candidate experience and ghosting, and replaced with people shouting about the true value of talent acquisition. What do you think the true value of talent acquisition means?
It is about spending time with your stakeholder, understanding their needs, being curious, listening to what they're after, and then giving them insight and offering value back around what are the competitors doing? What's the market intelligence saying? Who are the movers and shakers in the industry?
I'm actually really excited for TA teams to get back to basics and for LinkedIn to be stripped of all this noise of poor candidate experience, ghosting this, and to be replaced with people shouting about the true value of talent acquisition. What do you think the true value of talent acquisition means?
Being very clear about connecting talent acquisition to the return on investment. It depends what's important to the business. It could be cost, it could be speed, but making sure that you have the ability to capture that data, but then leverage and use that data in addition to the insights that talent acquisition can bring. Talent acquisition is where the magic happens. Talent acquisition is where the value is added. Talent acquisition is where that team can really be integrated into the overarching objective of the business. It can be commercially aligned. It has an attributable ROI. So, for example, a salesperson who goes out there and wins a couple of £1 million worth of deals and brings that revenue into the business is absolutely applauded. They might get huge incentives, big bonuses, flown off on special holidays, whatever it may be. There's this huge celebration of those individuals. But on the flip side, behind the scenes, there is a talent acquisition team there who is saving hundreds of thousands of pounds every single month, year, week. For example, in my most recent organisation, initially the agency spend was up near 10 million, dropped down to 4-5 million. At the point at which I was moving on, it was just over 2 million. So it's significantly dropping. Whilst that may not be revenue that is coming into the business, it is money that's not going out of the business, yet it's not celebrated in the same way. And I think in order for talent acquisition to really be seen to add the value and to really have a seat at the table, it needs to be very vocal and brave about, actually, this is what we do. Your salesperson brought in 2 million, we saved 4 million from going out. And so we're in a good space, right? I'm not asking to be sent on holiday or revered, but the acknowledgement that actually talent acquisition can play a commercial part in the organization's success is invaluable.
No one's popping out these champagne because you've saved a business 5 million in agency fees. They just look at it and go, that's your job.
Yeah.
And I heard this. I heard this story about, I think it was an oil and gas company offering employees like 10%, for example, of any cost savings that they create from implementing a new process. This one employee put in a process that ended up saving this company 20 million. True to their word, they got a couple of million in their next pay. I think that's great incentive from a company. It takes us away from being unsung heroes and we're celebrated just like that salesperson. Final question, Wendy. I'm asking all the guests this question on this season, and I think we've touched on it slightly through our conversation naturally. How do you think that the TA industry can work together and get out of this feast or famine cycle that you've mentioned?
Yeah, I love this question, and it's going to be really interesting through your series to see how people answer this, because ultimately, by the time we get to the end of all of your guests, what we should have as an industry is a master plan, right? So for me, it's about the difference between recruitment and talent acquisition, and I talk about them as separate disciplines because they are separate disciplines. So that feast or famine, if you're expanding and contracting your recruitment organization because you are fully staffing and then needing to retract that based on hiring volumes, etc., and what you're after is a transactional experience, then that is a recruitment team. And that works in some businesses, it works in many businesses actually, and sometimes that is what the business needs. But with that comes risk around that expansion and contraction. A talent acquisition function is a function that adds the additional value, the additional insight, the market intelligence, the curiosity, the experience, and is available not just in times of feast, but also becomes really important in times of famine around market insights, intelligence, competitor activity, compensation. Candidate pools move in a slightly different way. So in this market in particular, it can be very easy to get a little bit lazy and sloppy because there is such a plethora of talent in the market. But actually, the analytics and insight as to this market now would be absolutely fascinating. Who are the movers? Where are they going? Where are they being snapped up? Are they leaving the country? Are they changing industries? Are they moving sectors? So all of that data, all of that insight. And the question then becomes, do we need to use the kind of concertina expand and contract model with the talent acquisition team? In addition to that, I think it's about how you staff and resource your TA function. If you're looking to build out your model 100%, then you're always going to put your head above the parapet in terms of risk. So you need to be thinking about, how do I resource that team? How do I create a blended offering into the market and into the business that can optimize and leverage fractional support, interim support, fixed term contract support, RPO support? There is a real opportunity, and there's potentially a future conversation in there about the power of the relationship between third party vendors and in-house TA, because it's always been a relationship of friction, and it absolutely should not be. I can't do my job without a fractional business. I can't do my job without an RPO business. For me, the two big things, being really clear, is it recruitment or TA that you want or need? And how you resource your team and how you structure your team so that it can withstand those times of feast and famine.
There's a similarity in the way Liam answered that question. Although this is only podcast number 2, there were some crossovers about those TA teams relying more on fractional embedded talent, even fixed term contractors, to get away from this feast of famine. Instead of a knee-jerk reaction of looking at your team and going, we're really quiet at the moment, let's get rid of everyone. Are there people we can keep to work on employer branding projects whilst it's quiet? Because companies look at employer branding when it's too late. They look at employer branding when they get a massive hiring plan of 100 roles in, and they're on the back foot.
Exactly. So, you're back against the wall, drinking from the fire hose, trying to fill all the vacancies. There's no way that you can do employer branding at the same time. You did a really great post about this on LinkedIn in terms of all the things that a TA team can get involved in when recruitment is quiet. That was a really nice starting point. Hopefully we see less of this kind of expansion and contraction, and more blended approaches across the markets, which ultimately gives us greater sustainability as an industry.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for taking the time to speak. You've given us so much to think about, and your insights have absolutely been valuable. You're a founding member now of the Totally TA community. We absolutely love having you on the meetings and part of the conversation in between times.
Thanks for setting it up. It's been a great community, and to anyone watching or listening, if you're in the market in talent acquisition and want to be part of it, please reach out to Tom or I.
Or click on the link here. So thanks so much, Wendy. And yeah, bye.
Take care. Bye, everyone.